Welcome back to part two of our proceedings. We're now going to have the panel on View Through the Years, moderated by the Honorable Doris L. Pryor, Magistrate Judge. Please welcome Judge Pryor and the rest of the panelists. And I forgot to mention that the bios of all of our participants are in your program.
Good afternoon. So I got the privilege of being able to do Through the Years panel. And so when I was talking with Anga as we were organizing the panel, I said, one thing I don't want is to have this sterile conversation. And I said, so we're going to go ahead and pull out the couch, and we're going to put litigators on the couch and just have an in the living room conversation. So this is the closest version of a couch that we could get to. And so we're just going to have a candid conversation, because through the years, if you've looked at these bios, you can appreciate the women that are sitting here. And I can tell you that is an honor and a privilege to be able to have these women sit with me in the living room. I mean, because if you, just for a second, to conceptualize that Monica Foster, Chief Federal Defender of the Southern District of Indiana, has been in private practice, serving clients in death penalty cases, has practiced literally across the United States, has argued before the United States Supreme Court, and literally the onion continues to go, and if you pull back the resume, underneath those credentials that are prestigious within themselves, she is the one leftover Buffalo Bill fan. And I love an underdog. She's the one Buffalo Bill fan, and she loves rescuing dogs and hosting foreign exchange students in her home from Saudi Arabia. And so, Monica, the first question that I want to ask is, we see this resume that covers this gambit of what it means to be a female litigator. But the most unique thing that I've experienced of knowing you is through the ascension into the ranks of being the federal chief defender, you haven't lost what it means to be Monica. What's the secret of not losing self in the ascension?
You didn't tell me you were going to ask that question. You didn't send that question out. What's the secret of not losing yourself in growing into a job? Don't lose yourself growing into a job. I've always been a person who knows what I want. I grew up in a large, really loud Italian family on the East Coast. And if you didn't know who you were and what you wanted, you would get lost and trampled in that environment. I mean, for me, I bring who I am to the job. The job doesn't become who I am, ever. And I think if you don't know yourself and you don't like yourself, I guess that could happen, but I don't know. The question is confusing.
It was not confusing.
I just don't understand how that could happen, honestly.
How you could lose yourself. And so I would pull Jessica Wegg into the conversation. I know that practicing now with Satan Little is not where you started. From University of Indianapolis, both undergrad, master's, and then on to a graduate here of McKinney. Short time with the defense firm, now on the plaintiff's side of the house. But when we kind of delve deeper into that, Jessica, what I see is so unique is that you also are a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. And you practice part-time, you have children, and so what's the secret? What's the secret, I suppose, of this balance of being able to do both career, home, and being a litigator?
I don't know, but if you do, can you tell me? Because it's sometimes it's blissful and wonderful, and you need to have a strong support system at home. I have a really supportive husband who works really hard so that I can stay home with the kids, and and my 2-year-old daughter behaves once every 5 days, so that keeps me happy to stay home. And the other thing is that I would just say is just try to make yourself proud and make your mother proud of who you are and what you want to do with your life. And if you keep working towards that, to making yourself proud, then you can't really go wrong.
How did you know, when did you know that you personally wanted to make a change?
I didn't know until my babysitter moved away and I didn't have a choice but to be a stay-at-home mom. and then I thought, oh God, I'll put her on a wait list for a daycare and it'll just be the summer. And so I just had this summer with her, and it was the sweetest, most special time. And I thought, this is what I can do, and this is where I'm supposed to be right now. So it wasn't a plan. Never in a million years would I have thought that I was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. Before my son was born, my plan was send him to boarding school as quickly as possible so that I could get on with my life, and that's not how it works when they come. So it wasn't planned, and it just worked out. I discovered that part of myself when I was in a situation where I didn't have a choice. This was what we were going to do. I was going to stay home with Clara for the summer, and then I called the daycare and I said, you can give my spot to somebody else. I'm switching gears. So,
But isn't that what helps you with the work-life balance? That the joy that came from experiencing your children in that way?
yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I would. That's a great point. I would say that because of that joy, it is easier to justify not working. I love working. I love writing. I had a summary judgment response due yesterday, and it was harder for me than it used to be to get the words onto the paper because I'm out of practice. I'm not taking as many cases. It's not something that comes naturally to me right now, and that was frustrating to realize. But knowing that I was there with my daughter and I'm there for my son every day when he comes home from school, that makes it better and worth it right now.
Great, great. And so, Bernice, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. I know that at this point, you're the executive director of the Indiana Public Defense Council. And what I find simply amazing about Ms. Corley, if you don't know, is that she has literally been the executive head of in all 3 branches of state government. That's an accomplishment within itself. Michigan City, Indiana, loves sailing. And so Marion County, I believe, Marion County Public Defender Agency is a trial counsel before that. And so because you have literally transcended across legislative, general counsel there, and then legislative, executive, judicial, I'm going to say it because I can, because we're in my living room. What's the secret, Bernice, of not losing your voice? I'm sure you have been in a room, been at the table where you're the only one. Turn your light on.
Thank you, and I don't want to lose my voice now. So I will say, as we traverse, our careers and our pathways that take us in different directions, before I really was placed on, my path to develop my career, I think my parents prepared me very well for the challenges of being in my skin and being in my body. And so I didn't go into the world, I was far more believing that, equality had already been accomplished. I watched PBS. I thank the women who burn bras, and so I really did have this hopeful hat of the hard work has been done. Women have made things equal, cleared the way for me as a woman. Black women, I watch, keep your eye on the prize. I mean, I'm like, the wars have been fought. Thank God for the 60s and other people who did it, and I'm ready. And my parents kept telling me, baby girls, you're gonna have some challenges, be ready. So I think it's my mix of optimism that I was gonna be able to overcome because I had seen overcomers do it, but then also being ready. And so my heart wasn't, you get heart hurts in your career along the way when you feel like you're being, slighted either because of one ism or another, but I had seen overcomers do it, and I knew that I would be able to. So I just took along the way. I had many opportunities as a litigator where I learned that my voice was powerful and persuasive, and that encouraged me, and it just fueled, more going forward. And so that was my motivation. I think having adversarial experiences or difficult experiences actually can bring so much strength out of you that you didn't know you had, and can be the way to fuel yourself forward.
Thank you. And so, Ellen, not last and least, I know from experience and reading through your bio, I tell you, when I was preparing for this, she's a partner at Fagerty Baker Daniels. And if you haven't read it, if you haven't gone online, so because I spent a lot of time with my 4-year-old Netflix, so we're kind of binge watching Netflix when we were snowed in. And right now, our theme is Boss Baby, Boss Baby, boss, boss, boss baby. And if you read her resume, it reads as though that should be the subtitle. I'm serious. If you read it, so as I talk to Ellen, no matter what I'm saying, what I'm hearing is boss baby, and so I just want you to go there because I said we're at the couch, we're on the couch, and so just a little bit about Ellen, okay, is that for the past 25 years, she has defended employers across the United States. She has been recognized, and as she's an adjunct law professor at Mauer, an academic powerhouse, Swarthmore College with high honors, Mauer summa cum laude, articles editor at law school, and in magazines recognized the Indiana Lawyer, Best Lawyers in America, Benchmark Litigation, Indiana Super Lawyers, Chambers USA, and it goes on, a board member, frequent speaker at National Employment Law Institute. This is just a snippet of the work that Ellen has done over the past 25 years. And so when I look at your body of work, Ellen, as a litigator, the question I have is, what's the secret to making sure that the door of opportunity was open for Ellen and you ensured that it didn't close?
I can't tell you. No, it's a secret.
It's a secret.
And also, I just want to say that these are not the questions that I was given.
Thank you.
Being a litigator, I did prepare answers. Admittedly, it was at the last minute.
No, there's
But
no
these
need.
These were not the questions, so I'm gonna have to bob and weave a little bit here. There is no secret. I mean, I've been really lucky, and I think I kind of heard that from the first panel too. You need a little bit of luck. You need a lot of hard work. You need a little bit of luck. My firm has been incredibly supportive. When I first started practicing law, and this is like our panel is through the ages. I'm hoping I'm not the oldest person, but I think I might be. But when I first started practicing law, I was in the business litigation group, and there were no women. A friend of mine, Nancy Tinsley, had started a year before I did. I clerked, and the two of us were the only women. And the burning question at the time was, can a woman ever make partner in a litigation practice? Now, of course, that seems utterly silly now, but it wasn't silly back then. And this is not the I walked 10 miles in the snow type of thing. It's just that's the way it was. And the way to segue around to how I have been lucky is that I had great mentors. And the mentors were all men because that's who was on the litigation team. And what they did for me was they challenged me and they put me out there, and when they thought I was ready to do something, or even if I wasn't, they had me do it. I worked for great clients. I started working for Lilly early on in my career, and I really was given those opportunities. And so I think as a female litigator, and now there's lots of us, and we're not unusual, is take those opportunities when you get them and make the most of them.
Thank you. Thank you. And they're absolutely correct. I refused to use this canned questions because I can. These are litigators that should be able to think on their feet. And I thought they've done a phenomenal job the opening 20 minutes. And so my question to you, Jessica, is what led you to litigation?
Sort of by default. I out of law school went to a defense firm and did workers' comp defense, and then I went out on my own after a couple years, and I did all I knew was workers' comp, so I did plaintiff's work for workers' comp, and then I started getting involved with the rules committee and the pro bono committee at the Southern District, and now I do mostly prison litigation, just because that's what I enjoy. I love the clients. I always know where they are. They're always happy whenever I write them or talk to them, and ecstatic if I visit them. So it's a great relationship, and it's just it really works out. That's really how I got into it. It was just sort of the you get out of law school and you go down a course, and whichever, I didn't know where I wanted to go out of law school, so I just went with the river, and it took me here.
Thank you. Thank you. And what led you to litigation, Ellen?
It's funny because the first question you asked, how do you maintain yourself or something like this? This is me. I mean, litigation is what I do, and it's my personality too. My dad used to say that, like I went to law school, so I could stop fighting with all my family members and start fighting with other people. But I mean, it's what I love to do. It's the perfect career for me because, everything, I like everything about it. I like the analyzing, I like the arguing, I like being in court. So it's just something that fit naturally.
And Monica, I know that you have been both private practice and now with the Public Defender Agency as the chief. What are the biggest changes, if you'd like to share, that you've observed over the course of your career as a female litigator?
Oh, man. So in the early 1980s, and I think I'm going to give you a run for the money as far as the oldest one up here, I was pretty convinced it was me. But in the early 1980s, I had this little public defender case that I had done the appeal on, and then we took it into federal court on a habeas petition, and we lost there, and then we took it to the Seventh Circuit to the panel, and we won in the district court. We lost in the panel 2-1. So we did this, I'm like researching, I'm probably 20 some years old then, and researching, we'll do this en banc thing. Okay, so we filed this en banc thing, and sweet Jesus, it got granted. Right? I had no idea at the time how really incredible this was. The Seventh Circuit doesn't grant en banc very often. And this little pissant case that we had, we were going to go and argue it en banc. At the time, there were 11 judges on the Seventh Circuit. So we go up there. It was a case I was doing with my husband, who is a man. And we go up there, and I stand up to argue, and they all come out. And if you've never done this, it's like one line of judges, right? And I'm up there arguing, blah, blah, blah. And I said something funny, and one of the ones in the middle leans over and knocks his water over, and then the one next to him leans in, and I'm like, this looks like the Last Supper.
Oh, God.
And the reason it looked like the Last Supper is because all of them were white men. And I didn't even really realize it until the Last Supper vision came to me. So I go to my client the next day, and I'm like, yeah, it seemed like it went pretty good. It was a real hot bench. And I'm telling him the Last Supper story, and they were all men. My client's an African-American man. And he looks at me, and he says, maybe your husband should have argued the case. I was like, I'll kill you. My husband does. First of all, my husband could not even spell habeas. And I believe you know that. Vouch for me here, Doris.
It's being recorded. I can't.
And it was sort of like at that moment that I sort of am, I'm the one that gets called aggressive. When we were talking earlier about, you're either, they call you aggressive or you're too mellow. I am never the one that's accused of being too mellow.
I don't know why.
But Yeah, that was a really weird time. I didn't really even notice it till it was right in my face. And I think a big part of that is growing up in a big, loud family. You know, it was just the way it was, and you were expected to, fight or perish.
And
I mean, not that my house was like Animal Farm or something, but
I don't know if anyone can top the Last Supper depiction. We could move to the next question unless it wanted to share another challenge, Ellen.
Well, as far as the change in the practice of law, by far the most phenomenal change is e-filing. E-filing is the greatest thing ever. Although people that work with me are like, it used to be at 5:15, 5:20, we would be done with the brief. Somebody would be running over, banging on the door, begging, please, please let me in. It got to the point where nobody would do it for me anymore. They were like, you need to go do it yourself, Ellen. But then we got e-filing. And now we can file at 11:59. So that is both a blessing and a curse. But so to me, that's the most phenomenal thing. And of course, there have been a lot of technological changes. But just to echo in on a story, I was thinking about, some of the things that have happened that have literally, kind of made you gasp. And there are two. I'll just tell one story because I don't want to take too much airtime. But I was a mid-level associate. It was my first like big case. It was a case for Lilly. It involved a suggestion plan, which is where you make a suggestion and you can get money. And it involved dog cages. And it was in state court. And we had a judge whose name I do not recall, but he only had one arm, and we used to call him the one-armed judge, Judge Price, who, by the way, publicly stated he would never grant summary judgment. And in fact, he did not grant us summary judgment. And we were in court, and we were arguing it. And I was lead. I mean, it's like my first big case. And the lawyer on the other side, of course, was male. And some motion that I was arguing that I was probably losing because I lost most of those motions. And afterwards, Judge Price clearly puts on his settlement hat. And he says to the lawyer, he says to me, you represent a big corporation and the corporations have lots of money, blah, blah, blah. And he says to the other lawyer, and you ought to think about this, your client's going to be seen as just a money grubber and just wanting to make a fast buck. And then he turned to me and he said, and you're a woman and juries sometimes don't like women. And I mean, it was literally like a gasp in my mind, like a judge could like say something to that would be like a legitimate consideration that would make my client want to settle the case. And, I think we've come a long way from that kind of thing that happened early in my career. And I think that, with the
and now they just think it.
They think it, they don't say it. One more story, if you will indulge. One of my favorite judges, and I'm not going to mention his name because the story doesn't put him in a favorable light, in my opinion. I had a big case. It was a local client, and I'd been working up the case. We were going to trial. It was a very hotly contested case. And there was a corporation from New York, and they wanted their lawyer to be on the case, who just happened to be an older man who I ended up marrying, but that's another story. But anyway,
We have time. We have time.
We're trying the case together. It's my case. You know how you feel when someone's brought in over the top. But I was like, it's my case, and I made it very clear to my husband, George, this is my case. And he was like, yeah, whatever. But anyway, we had it divided up. I was doing the opening. He was crossing the plaintiff. I was going to do this. He was going to do that. We get started. I do the opening. He starts crossing the plaintiff. There's all these evidentiary issues, blah, blah, blah. And the second day of trial, the judge, who I almost said his name, the judge says, he comes in and he says, Mr. Stoner, I'd like to talk to you in chambers. And then he kind of looks over and he said, oh, and you can bring your associate with you. And it was just kind of, and again, that was
I heard the
thing.
gasp. Could y'all do that again?
And I think to bring this around to what we're dealing with is, I think that as a female lawyer, you always have to fight that perception of juniority, if that's a word, which is even if you're the most senior person on the case, sometimes people are going to not realize that or think that. And I think that our defense against that is as soon as, you're the most prepared person in the room, you open your mouth, all of a sudden people realize you're in charge. They might think initially that you're junior because you're female and there are fewer women, but we fight back with our competence and our quiet and calm assertiveness, as any styles may be. But those are kind of two experiences that I had as
It's even worse so than
litigator.
junior lawyer. I was in a deposition last week, and the deponent, who is a lawyer, came in and asked my co-counsel, who is a very accomplished female, to get him a cup of coffee.
Ellen, I do want to follow. I do want to follow up. I cannot touch that one at all, in the short window that we have. But because I have shared your resume with all of us this afternoon, Ellen, have you always felt, even though you walked in the room, the most accomplished person in the room, do you ever feel as though, as a female litigator, that you lost your voice or you questioned whether or not you should be in the room?
Not really, but I do think, and I had this in my notes because we are segueing back to closer to some of the questions I prepared for. I was thinking about what it's like.
Just
to be,
let it go, Ellen.
Okay, I can't.
I'm flying the plane. Just let it go.
Okay, anyway. So one of the things I was reflecting on, and it was interesting because I didn't know the research, is, and this is a little bit sexist, but I think that men are big interrupters. And I feel like that's an issue that I have when I go into the courtroom, because you may have 20 minutes of the judge's time, and that's all you're going to get. And the men get more airtime because they talk more and they interrupt. And some judges will be good about it and say, don't interrupt her, or, you'll have your chance. But not all judges. And so sometimes it gets to be a little bit of a, he just interrupted me, should I interrupt him? But you have to be somewhat assertive sometimes, because it's sort of like a war for this precious time that is the judge's time.
Thank you. And so, Bernice, I want to follow up on something you said, that you had really good upbringing with your parents, and coming from Michigan City, now being the executive director. So my question, if you had the opportunity to talk to the younger Bernice, what advice would you give her as she's leaving law school and entering into this adversarial litigation environment that you know now? Yeah.
Wow, that's
That one wasn't on the list either.
that was not on the list, Judge. That's a thank you, a challenging question. I would say to not question myself so much. Oftentimes, that internal dialogue of, I think I'm right, and then questioning and editing, I did way too much of that. And that's something that often I have, some of my worst memories are like, why did you censor yourself? Why didn't you be more bold? So sometimes I wrestle with that. If I could share a little example of that, it's a positive ending though. So I had a suppression issue in front of a judge that I absolutely love and thought very, very highly of. And this is early in my career. And it was a great issue. I was certain I was going to win, very prepared. And so I'm arguing the issue, and the judge kept restating my argument to me, but altering it. He's like, what you mean to say, Ms. Corley, is XYZ. Wasn't what I said. And so I repeated it back because I thought, well, maybe he misheard me. And he did it to me again. Well, I was so fortunate. Behind me, waiting for a hearing, were 3 female public defenders that I know that I turn around like, am I wrong? And they were like, you're right, keep going, keep going. And so I had this like cheering bench behind me, and I held my ground and stuck to my argument, lost in front of him, won on interlock. And later he came back and we had a really great discussion about the hearing, and kind of why he kind of felt like he wasn't understanding or needed to correct my perception on things. And so it helped our relationship, but having good people behind you supporting you, and when you're questioning yourself, to not question yourself so much. So that'd be my advice.
Monica, the same question. What advice would you give?
I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way to put this. I guess it's a same version of be assertive and don't question yourself. I'm the person that like says the stuff. I am assertive, and then I'll go home and I suffer terribly from insomnia. At night I like list all the reasons why I suck, and then I put them in alphabetical order. And And so like I would be assertive and then I would go, oh, they're gonna think I'm a bitch. And you know, maybe I was, but so what? I mean, it's, you know, I am in criminal defense. It's a rough and tumble world.
So don't change. That's your advice.
Well, no, don't, I think with the part of what Bernice was saying, which is don't doubt yourself so much, you know? Don't doubt yourself so much. And also, don't just be your job. That's the most important thing I would tell my younger self. Don't just be, no one lays on their deathbed and says, you know, I really wish I would have worked more. Nobody does that. And I think like as a younger person, I was so, you know, I can remember working 7 days a week all the time. And, you know, a lot of that is because I really didn't know what I was doing. But, you know, we kind of make it up as we go along in the criminal world because the old traditional stuff didn't work. So we got to try something different. But, you know, when you think you have to work all the time, what that really is you're thinking way too much of yourself and the control that you have, right? Take a step back and say, the world isn't going to stop turning if I take a day off or a week off. You know, I've always believed that you take time off, it makes you better at your job. It makes you more efficient. And it makes you a better human. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're not really all trying to be better lawyers. We're trying to be better humans. I don't mean to sound all crystally, but.
Ellen? What advice would you give to your younger self that you wish you had known now, that you know now?
I think similar to what was just said, I feel like when I was a young lawyer, I was in a hurry to get someplace, and I was very intensely working, and now I'm kind of like, well, I got there, now what? And I think to not realize that you know, as they say, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but to really give yourself some space. I think the other thing as a you know, I had 3 kids, and so I had home and I had work, and to try to, you know, give yourself some space to just be with your kids or be with your family, and not let all these other things interrupt and distract. I remember once when I was really, really busy, and this story doesn't reflect that well on me, but my daughter gave me, for Mother's Day, she said, I'm buying you tickets and we're going to this movie. And my initial reaction, I mean, I of course smiled and said thank you, and my initial reaction was kind of, I was annoyed. Like, I'm gonna have to take some time off to go to this movie, which I don't necessarily wanna go to. Mm-hmm. But I did it, and you know, it was great. And it was like this, you know, away from the office, go to the movie, spend some time with my daughter, and I think that was kind of her way of reminding me, like, you need to make that space. And so that's, I guess, would be my suggestion, make that space.
And Jessica, how have you made that space? Is advice to yourself?
I don't know. I just try to keep everything in perspective. You have to remind yourself that everybody's emergencies aren't your emergencies. They're everybody else's emergencies. Every client that you have thinks that their case is the most important, and why aren't you doing this exactly right now? And it's really, really important to them, and you can't lose sight that this is a big deal for them, and so you don't diminish that. But when you're not on the phone with them and when you're not emailing them, you're like, you can prioritize and you can say, this is not a right now an emergency. That's a tomorrow emergency, or that's a Monday emergency, and you just have to. I think that particularly as women, we want to fix things and we want to help everybody and we don't want to see anybody suffer, and if you only ever help everybody else, then you're just going to put yourself in a hole and you're going to be no good to anyone. So you have to really recognize when somebody calls you desperate for help on their case, you know, talk to them, but that emergency isn't your emergency. That is your job. You have another life to live, and you can't forget to do that.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone on the panel being open and candid. And as I look across the room, you know, there was a wait list to come to this program because of the topics that were discussed, the panelists that were being presented. So I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure a lot of junior women litigators in this room want to ask. what opportunities are out there for junior women litigators, women who want to potentially follow in your path? That one was given to you.
I mean, contrary to the last speaker with all of the bad statistics about lack of equity, partner pay equity, and all that stuff, I think this is a great time to be a female litigator. I think the opportunities are amazing. And one of the reasons that this is a great time is because, judges and clients are seeing it as a value to get women into the courtroom and to respect the voices of women. So I think that there are great opportunities here. And I also think that we've come a long way in terms of working, in terms of how people work, in terms of recognizing flexibility. When I was, I'd only been at my firm a few years, and I said I don't want to bill 1,800 hours, that seems laughable, but that's what it was back then. That was the first time anyone had said that. Well, there was another person that didn't want to bill 1,800 hours because he wanted to train for the Nordic Combine. That didn't get approved. But I'm serious, that's a true story. He wanted to be in the Olympics, and he figured the Nordic Combine was probably good because not many people can ski and shoot, and there was one other aspect of it. But our firm did not grant that. But when I said, I want to work fewer hours because I have kids at home, they granted that. It was revolutionary at the time. Now it's fairly commonplace. But I think take advantage of those types of things. One of the things that makes me really sad is when I see women drop out. And you're having your kids when they're young, it's very compelling. And I see so many women drop out at that point saying, I really can't do both. And I know it's hard to do both, but I really encourage everyone to hang in there. Because there's a lot of flexibility now, and it's worth it in the long run.
Thank you. Bernice?
Thank you. I think there are a lot of opportunities. I'll stick to criminal law. There are so many opportunities for women to be litigators in criminal law, prosecutorial side, defense side, doesn't matter. And I really encourage it as a place to be. There is no end of opportunity to develop skills and experiences that is just unparalleled. The skills you will gain in understanding people, communicating better, and as well as being an excellent practitioner. You also, if you do go into that area, and let's say you don't immediately have a sponsor or a mentor that is shepherding you or guiding you, you have to look for that, and you have to make opportunities for yourself. But if you go into those areas, I think there's plenty of space and lots of welcoming people there, but then make a space for yourself and keep moving forward. It's a great area to start.
Jessica?
If you Google Southern District of Indiana pro bono opportunities, you'll find a list of cases that would be more than happy to get some people on. And that's kind of what really started me working more. I had been doing just a lot of, discrete reading or research and writing assignments within my firm, and then there's all these cases that need attorneys. So if you're not getting any callbacks for your interviews, make your own firm. It's not that hard, and I mean that part isn't, but running your own firm isn't easy. But make your own opportunities and go out and find them and promote yourself. You're not in law school because you're dumb. You're in law school because you're an accomplished person already. So go out there and use that, and the opportunities are there. There's no shortage of opportunities. You just have to be willing to maybe not do what exactly you were thinking you were going to do, and it'll probably be the universe telling you that's not what you're supposed to do anyway. So just look out, keep your eyes open.
Okay, so earlier they were talking about letting associates argue motions. Is that a big deal, arguing a motion? Wouldn't you rather do a trial, like a real trial from start to finish? Wouldn't you rather have a window to throw yourself out of instead of working in a cubicle? So,
For those that are participants in JLAP, I apologize for that comment. That was inappropriate, and I'm going to acknowledge it as inappropriate.
I can't believe how you dogged me like this. So, I'm the chief federal defender, we hire regularly. We don't pay as much as the big firms, but we do pay lawyers six figures, at least with the opportunity to make six figures. I also have a CJA panel that I am really trying hard to diversify. When I came in 6 years ago, my panel was very Caucasian and very male and very elderly. Not that we don't like our white old guys, we do. But I'm trying to get younger people, I'm trying to get women, I'm trying to get people of color. And this is a great opportunity because you get to litigate in federal court, which is a really fine place to litigate. The chairs are so much more comfortable. And the judges are actually waiting for you when you get there. There's no cattle call. And we'll teach you how to do it. If you don't know how to do federal cases, we have what we call a developmental panel. We can put you on. We'll pair you with mentors from our office, and we'll do brown bag trainings that you get free CLE for a year. These are great opportunities, and they're great opportunities for female litigators, even if you're in a firm. We've got one lawyer from Ice Miller, because she wants to get in the courtroom more. And we've got fraud cases, and she loves fraud cases, and my office isn't actually all that crazy about fraud cases, because we prefer child pornography cases. A story for another time, but true. So, I've got opportunities for you. Email me. There's lots of stuff out there. You just got to look for it.
And so one of the things that I've been doing in the last 3 minutes that we have, I have been combing through Becoming. It's an autobiography of Michelle Obama. And so every night I get a little nugget kind of placed in my soul as I'm gleaning through this autobiography. And so in the 3 minutes that we have, I would love, no, Ellen, this was not one of your questions that was submitted. I would love for you, 4 fabulous women, to share at least one nugget for our soul as we close out the panel. Do you mind if we start with you, Bernice?
Good one. My nugget is, it's challenging. You have everything you need to go where you want to go.
Beautiful nugget. Beautiful nugget. Ellen?
My nugget is embrace risk, challenge yourself, because if you don't, you're not going to grow. Really put yourself out there, and it's scary, but it has rewards.
Thank you. Jessica?
Mine isn't mine. I don't know who said it, but never be weary of doing what is right.
Why are you two laughing?
I don't know if they're going to have to censor your nugget. I don't know.
Federal district judges sitting in the front row are laughing at me. I'm going to say be kind to yourself, make time for yourself, and kick ass.
Let's give these wonderful women a hand. Thank you so much.